Good morning, good afternoon, or potentially good evening, depending on where you are at. Welcome back to the SASE Breakout. SASE is a cybersecurity concept that Gartner defined in 2019, and Gartner expects that by 2024, at least 40% of the enterprises will have strategies to adopt SASE. So today we are joined by 4 vendors with leading technologies for this really high growth market. We have Matthias Whitler from Palo Alto Networks. Then we have Daniele Lopé from Infoblox, Tom McVeigh from Menlo Security, and we're ending with Clive Finlay from Symantec, who you just also saw in the panel discussion. We're having a packed agenda, so let me get into it. Please make sure if you have questions to put them in the chat. We will try to answer those during the sessions, but if we don't manage to, then we'll get back to you on those questions at a later stage. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Matthias.
Peter, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Matthias Wiedler. I run the SASE business for EMEA at Palo Alto Networks. You already talked a bit, Peter, about what SASE is. I want to dig a bit deeper into the SASE technology, into the Gartner concept, what customers are looking for, and what is in for you as a partner if you jump on the SASE train. First of all, we all know that the digital world is changing dramatically. If you look a few years back in terms of security, we had everything within the corporate network. The data was within the corporate network, mostly the users. We used internet for surfing mainly. And that was it basically. And protecting such an environment was very easy. We had a castle and we just put a firewall security services around that castle. From a networking perspective, it was kind of the same. We had everything within our corporate network and so-called MPLS network. There was control over the network, control over the data flows. But now with the digital transformation, everything changes. If you produce forklifts, for example, you have predictive maintenance. Right? More and more processes are digital. The internet has become mission critical in general. The apps are not longer hosted within the data centers. They're hosted on multiple different places, right? Different public data centers, sometimes private data centers on top, AWS, Google, Azure, etc., etc. But to make that even more complex for networking and security world, people work now from everywhere, and COVID accelerated that. They work from the home office, they work from the airport, they work from the hotel, they work from different branch offices. So that all changed the world completely, the IT world. Now, from a networking perspective, it's not just taking control over your internal network. And from a security perspective, it's not just about securing the castle. It's about securing the user and the application, no matter where they are, and that made it much more complex. To address those challenges, Gartner developed the concept Peter talked about briefly, Secure Access Service Edge, SASE. It got introduced in 2019, and it mainly addresses branch office and mobile users. Because of all those mega trends, and because of all the networking and security challenges, Gartner decided to come up with a white paper which describes what the ideal ways to protect users, no matter if they're in a branch office or mobile, and also how to connect it. So in this concept, Gartner talks about connectivity and security. So full-blown SASE concept is connectivity and security for a mobile user and for a branch office user. And in an ideal Gartner world, they say everything is managed from one vendor with one single user interface with a thin hardware and heavy cloud approach. So in other words, move your security and connectivity as much in the cloud as possible, get as much functionality from one vendor and make sure this is easy to manage and to maintain from one vendor. And if you have that, and if you follow that concept, then you have connectivity and security for branch office users and for any kind of remote users. And the fundamental part is to provide that services based on a CTNA architecture, on a zero trust network access architecture. I will walk you now through what Palo Alto does in that space, and how you can take advantage of that shift. But before that, I want to talk about the market. So SASE is a massive market. It contains cloud-based solutions like firewall as a service, secure web gateway, CASB, but also technologies like SD-WAN, so networking and security. Overall, the whole SASE bucket, the total addressable market is 40 billion. So that means there is a lot of market for everybody. And we see at Palo Alto an incredibly fast adoption, 3-digit growth numbers on the SASE space each year. And also it's a market which is for almost everybody. So almost everybody is moving into that, either full blown, right, including connectivity, or they start adapting parts of it, mid-sized customers, as well as very, very large customers. Palo Alto developed, based on the Gartner SASE concept, technology called Prisma Access and Prisma SD-WAN, which goes under one Prisma SASE umbrella. And we have 4 main blocks, how we can help you and your customers to really have a secure and fast and reliable connectivity and security platform. Digital experience monitoring, I talk later a bit about dig deeper into those topics. Digital experience monitoring should help our customers to get control over their network back. SD-WAN is a technology we talk about a lot in all areas, but the problem with SD-WAN is often that it doesn't get along with security because there is often a link missing. I cover that in a second. Zero trust network access should allow remote users to connect safely and with a very high performance to the services they're using, no matter where they are. And a cloud-based internet access solution helps you to get rid of hardware firewalls, hardware proxies, etc., hardware CASB solutions. Let's dig deeper into what exactly are we doing here. Cornerstone number 1 of Palo Alto SASE platform is digital experience management. Imagine you have users working remotely, for example, sitting in a home office and accessing an application in the cloud, let's say Office 365. Something doesn't go well. The user calls the support desk. So it's now very tricky for the support to figure out where the problem is. Would the user be in the corporate network, you have your tools, it still takes forever to figure out what the problem is, mostly depending on the solutions you have in place, but at least you have a possibility. With our digital experience management platform, you can figure out for all your users, if they're in the corporate network, in the branch office, at the airport, or in the home office, if they have any issue, where exactly the issue is, at the fingertips. Is it the Wi-Fi in the home office because Wi-Fi isn't working properly? Is it because this kid had ended homeschooling, is now using PlayStation heavily, which has an influence on the performance? We can figure that out. Has the router an issue? The laptop itself? Is it the ISP connectivity? Is it the application? We don't have time to dig very deep into that topic, but digital experience management helps to troubleshoot your whole SASE platform and to solve issues within minutes. That saves a lot of time and brings time to resolution down, sometimes from weeks into minutes. A very important part, especially when you use the internet a lot for connectivity, you don't have any control anymore. You get the control over your network back with that platform. The second cornerstone is zero trust network access. We all know classical, traditional VPN solutions, RAS VPN solutions, SSL VPN solutions. They're getting more and more outdated because if you want to connect to your corporate network, it might work, but let's be honest, who loves his VPN solution? Mostly users complain, it's slow, you need to set it up manually, etc., etc. And let's don't forget, if we connect to a VPN, we extend our network by an additional device, the laptop who's connecting from the outside. So we always connect a network with another device, right? It's a network connection. And then we need to make sure that security works properly. It's very difficult. Now in a new world where users access multiple applications in parallel on different locations, internal network, corporate network in another location, AWS, Azure, it gets complicated and you might need different VPN profiles, etc., etc. The Zero Trust Network Access allows us to, first of all, connect a user very fast with a cloud-based remote access solution. You don't have VPN concentrators or anything. It's first fully cloud-based. It's rolled out very fast. It is a segmentation between each application you use and each connectivity path. That is a Zero Trust part. And we only connect a specific user with a specific application. And then from a configuration perspective, you always say this user is allowed to access this application. And everything else is done automatically. What is the fastest location I should go? What is the fastest path? And it's an always on. It's not like a VPN, you have to fire it up and work with it. No, it works super easy, super fast. From a user experience perspective, it's faster because we have like 102 entry points into the cloud and then routed in a very fast way to the user. Compared to classical remote access VPNs, it's much faster, it's much easier to use, it's much more secure without going into too much detail. Part 3 is cloud-based internet access, firewall as a service, secure web gateway as a service. Instead of hosting a secure web gateway or internet access firewalls in a few locations, you have here more than 100 locations you can use with Palo Alto Networks. Think about having local internet breakouts. We always have a very local and fast route to provide full-blown security, the best security in class, which are used from the Palo Alto firewalls. We provide that with even additional functionality as a service layer, fully service-based, real-time configuration, administration, no hardware needs to be installed. That makes it very smooth. And then last but not least, the connectivity part. So we talked about troubleshooting, that's digital experience management. We talked about the security platform, remote access and internet access. And now we talk about connectivity. So SD-WAN is a technology which is widely adapted to improve user experience and to reduce costs for traditional MPLS networks. And we are the only company who delivers a next generation SD-WAN, which is fully application defined. Again, it's application defined, not just application aware. So that means we really do layer 7 routing decisions. And because of lots of intelligence, it's fully autonomous. So if there is any issues, we have lots of machine learning in that. We automatically reroute and make decisions based on behavior in the past. It's an incredibly smart solutions. The big advantage of our solution is that because of the application layer approach, you make smarter decisions. Because of the way how we designed the product, the rollout is 10 times faster than any other rollouts we see on the market. So we easily can roll out even 250 appliances a week for a customer. We do that often, something like that. It's very fast. And the support cases are going down because it's very autonomous and self-healing. That means the availability of the network is higher, the support efforts are much lower. But the most important part is this is a full-blown SASE story. So we provide connectivity, security, and troubleshooting. And this is all one single platform. So now you can access to SaaS, public cloud, the internet, HQ, no matter from where you come. And on top, there is, we can cover that today because of the time, there is even an IoT protection in the product. So what we basically do is we help your customers to connect, secure, and troubleshoot branch offices and mobile users no matter where, no matter which device. You have a much better security. It's for sure easier from a rollout perspective because one user interface, one vendor you work with, it makes the service design easier for the customers. And for sure, it's from a cost perspective interesting to have that all put together, operational costs, etc., etc. And with the full-blown solution, the network uptime will even go dramatically up. And for a partner, for you as a partner, we help you to get started with SASE. If you have any questions, happy to help you and to get you up on that speedboat. We have an incredibly easy service design for you. One vendor, you go out, one implementation, and we have by far the most comprehensive solution in the market. Many companies talk about delivering SASE, but what they really do is they deliver a part of SASE. It's basically if you say, I sell a car, and if you go there to look at the car, you get 4 tires, or the engine is missing. This is full-blown SASE, this is end-to-end, and this is what nobody else delivers, a full-blown end-to-end SASE platform for your customers for that incredibly fast-growing market. And on top, because we have even a broader platform, not just SASE, right? We can even go wider. We have cloud workload protection. In some locations, you might need hardware firewalls, etc., etc. That all goes also together in one single management interface. This allows you to develop for your customers, to deliver your customers a full cloud-first architecture. So happy to work with you. I hope that pitch was interesting. And back to Peter.
Many thanks, Matthias. It was a very nice and clear presentation. We did receive one question. Do you have any plans to cater to smaller SMB customers who may not have the commercial budget set up?
I think we already do, right? It's a user-based licensing. And imagine you get, for example, a full-blown SASE story just for one location. You don't need any hardware firewall, etc., etc. This is something we should investigate, how big or small a customer is. But in the end, the savings are massive because you don't have to ship hardware. For the partner, it's easier to configure because you can do everything remotely. I think in the end, we are ready to do that. And the question is, how do you define SMB and a special use case? It's probably not for 5, 6, 7 users, but if you go a bit higher, then it's a pretty interesting approach for everybody. Also, I think from a commercial perspective.
Excellent, thank you. Then many thanks, Matthias. Then we would like to hand over to Danielle.
Thank you, Peter. And I think I've heard a small Dutch accent there, so we continue with the Dutch accent.
Good luck.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Loppe. I'm a sales trainer at Infoblox, and in the coming few minutes, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a glimpse in how DDI can also play a big role in these SASE projects that your customers are going to be on, and the power that DDI can bring to that. So before diving into that, I just want to get everybody on the same page regarding Infoblox as a company and in which categories we play. So Infoblox started over 20 years in the network space. We were delivering core network services to our customers, also known as DNS, DHCP, and IPAM. And with that, we gave the network teams this network control and network visibility. And over time, we also realized that actually the security teams, they also need that network visibility. So we have expanded our portfolio into the security space as well. And obviously, we also have been seeing the trend of all these customers out there, these organizations out there that are spreading out their network, and they're having these ad networks also need that network and security services delivered. So we have expanded our portfolio further to also cater to those typical scenarios. And when we think about our portfolio and the use cases that we help our customers with, then these are the most important ones where we bring value to these organizations. Whether it's customers that are reducing their data center footprint and moving to the cloud, whether they are on SD-WAN journeys or trying to automate their security efforts as well, and this is where we can play a role. And what I think in all these kind of initiatives, what the main common factor in is that these organizations, they need a solution at the edge where they can easily consume these network and security services, just as easy as they can get compute and storage from Amazon and the like. So this is where Infoblox with our edge solutions is a sweet spot to bring these edge solutions with network and security services. Okay, so why should then actually your customer think about changing and looking at a solution like Infoblox? And this is also a little bit referring what you just heard from Matthias, but it's indeed this business. The business side of the house is moving so fast. They want to improve these customer experiences, these manufacturing processes, the business operations. So they bring all these digital capabilities into the organization. They're investing in these SaaS applications. So now the data and assets are all living on in different platforms. And they're bringing IoT devices because everything needs to be faster, connected, and smarter. So now all these network and security teams have to manage this network that is truly all over the place. There are no borders anymore. And they manage this with this infrastructure that was centered around the data center from back in the days. So what we see is that they're trying to come up with this workaround because they say like, okay, you as the business, you go out and have all these solutions in the cloud and all these remote sites that are connected in the IoT devices. But all that traffic that each of these users are and devices are generating will have to pass it through the data center because we need to inspect the data, and only then you can go out into the cloud, into these SaaS applications. And obviously, that is not optimal for the business because what happens when a connection, when a remote site loses that connection to the data center? Let's think of a retail shop. They cannot do their business anymore. Their business is coming to a standstill, and they lose money as long as they don't have that connection to the data center. Second issue is around that latency that it introduced, because now when I'm a user for Salesforce.com, for example, I have to go through the data center, get connected to Salesforce.com, and when my data center is in California and I'm in Europe, I don't have a good experience with that application. And you can imagine when there's all these colleagues are having the same issue and what this does to the productivity. So this is, of course, the reason why all these companies, these forward-looking companies and organizations are looking at SASE type of projects that they're introducing to modernize their infrastructure. And Matthias also mentioned like these SD-WAN projects that your customers are on. And if your customer is already implementing SD-WAN, that's a great way to start to improve that user experience at these remote sites, because these SD-WAN solutions will route the traffic to the closest point of presence of these SaaS applications, so that the user and all these devices have the best experience when they go out to the internet. So we believe at Infoblox that more modernization in that network infrastructure needs to happen to complement all these SD-WAN projects and initiatives that your customers are on. So this is why we have built over a couple of years ago the BloxOne platform. So it's specifically built for these edge types of scenarios. So within this platform, the customers will be able to consume and spin up network and security services at the edge and at scale. So they can do this from a single cloud application to hundreds to thousands of remote sites. And currently we have 2 applications available for customers that they can leverage. So the first one is Blocks One DDI, and the second one Blocks One Threat Defense. And over time we will build more innovation onto the platform, more applications, so that once your customer is hooked into one of these 2 solutions, over time you can bring more value to them as well. I want to go into the use cases that this platform can bring to your customers. So the first one is around guaranteed SaaS local internet breakout, and as I just mentioned, this is something that SD-WAN is already providing to your customers. So why should they look at Infoblox to complement this? Well, what you will hear from your customers, something you want to ask them is like, how are they still at the moment resolving and managing their DNS and DHCP? Because most probably that's still happening in the data center. And as mentioned earlier in my presentation, that once that connection to the data center is down, I at the remote site cannot do anything anymore. So my business is stopped. And that's why we can complement that with our Blocks One DDI solution. And with that solution, your customer will be able to spin up these DDI services at the remote site, at a retail shop, at a branch office, so that's what we like to call, we bring the capability in of local survivability. So if that remote site loses the connection to the data center, it doesn't mind. That remote site can still do its thing, can still run the business as usual, because DNS and DHCP is resolved locally. So that's one way how we complement these SD-WAN projects. Another way to complement it also further is to help the network teams to truly move at the speed of the business. Because what is happening now, what you will see, is that these network teams, they have to manage a lot of DDI environments. They have some Microsoft here, they have some Linux at the other sides, they're using switches and routers to do some DNS and DHCP. So that becomes very complex and manual when they have to upgrade and patch these or send new policies to those systems. They have to go in one by one. It's time consuming, it's error prone. So how we help here in this case is that with a Blocks One DDI, your customers get a cloud managed DDI. So that brings, for one, this visibility on everything that's happening in the DDI environment. And with that visibility, they can truly manage and control the DDI environment. So let's say they want to send out a patch to a certain part of their DDI environment. Maybe it's only the European part of their environment. They can send it out from this cloud managed solution. So it becomes an update instead from one to one, it becomes one to many. So you can imagine the speed that they win with that. And the same as if they want to spin up certain DNS services at remote sites. I can be here in Europe. Maybe I'm a construction company and I have a building project going on in Australia. I can just, from my home, bring up these core network services at the remote sites, and it's there for the business to be used in minutes. So those are some of the use cases how we complement the SD-WAN projects that your customers might be on. In addition to this power of DDI that we can bring to the network team, we also bring power to the security teams using the DDI context and information that is in the networks of your customers. So for example, when we think about DNS is in every network, in every cloud, we use it all the time when we're connecting to the network, when we're connecting out of the network onto the internet. DNS is used. It's the first line of communication. Without it, communication of the applications won't work. And it's the same for the security people. They need to use DNS as well, right? To get into our networks or to move data out, to exfiltrate data out of the network. They will need to use DNS as well. And DNS itself as a protocol is not secured. So And we see that also in some of the researchers that various vendors, security vendors, have been doing, where they saw that over 90% of the malware uses DNS. So we have been asking actually Forrester to find out, okay, so how are companies doing on that DNS security? And one of their findings was that 70% of these security and risk leaders are using DNS already as a control point to defend against attacks. That is a great way because it's the first line of communication. Use it as a first line of defense. So it's something you can ask your customer as well if they're already doing that or if they need help with that. This is something they can even do without a solution with like Infoblox, but we can bring even more threat intelligence to those to be used as a control point. The second finding of that research from Forrester is also that almost 2/3 of those leaders see that DNS is able to catch threats that their other security tools can't. And that is because the other security tools, they don't play on the DNS layer. So to capture those threats that happen on the DNS protocol, you have to be on the DNS layer so you can truly inspect that DNS data and see if there's some unusual behavior going on. So what we see is that a lot of customers are not using DNS as a control point, and they are also not able yet to inspect that data so deeply. So this is where a solution like Infoblox can help. And obviously, there's more actually in the security space where we can help, because we also know we can't protect ourselves 100% of the times as much as we wish. So incidents happen, breaches happen, and then it's up to the security team to understand, okay, how big is this breach and who is involved and what has happened in my network. And currently that approach to get all that network information, they have to get that from these different systems, the different DDI systems, and have to copy and paste that into their security tools. And that's, of course, a time-consuming process. You don't have that time in the security space. And these are also expensive people. They shouldn't spend time on that. So just as we talked about earlier, the visibility that we bring to the network teams, we bring that data, all that network context and data also into the hands of the security teams, into the tools that they are using and where they need it. And in that same concept of visibility and bringing everything around the network data together, we also what we also do is your customer has a lot of these threat data feeds that they get from the different vendors that they work with. We bring this into one single platform. So now all of a sudden your customer can make all kind of pivots. Because when we think about DDI data, DDI can say so many things. It's like when a device joins the network, DHCP will know it because it has to give that device an IP address. We will also know what the device is doing, where it's going, because it has to make DNS requests. So we know when this device is making a request to this malicious website. And then we can make these data pivots to say, like, okay, what other devices have been going to this malicious website? Or a data pivot like who of our devices did go to domains that are related to that malicious site. So we're giving all that data to these teams so that they can work more efficient and more effective. And we do this, we're sharing this data through these data integrations and that we have built into these various security tools that your customer might already have. So we have integrations with these various vendors that you see listed here. And as Palo Alto was just on the stage, we also have integrations into Palo Alto. And all these security tools, we know, and those teams that work with these tools, they work at its best when the right data is in there, all that valuable network context, and it's there in real time. So that is what these integrations are all about, to truly help those security teams with the DDI context. And it's not only pushing the data into those systems, we can also actually trigger and enforce certain actions for the customer. let's say again, a new device joins the network. Your vulnerability scanner won't know about it. So that's but DHCP will know, so we can kick it over to the vulnerability scanner. Same when that device is already for a longer time on the network and starts to make malicious requests. We can stop it and also send it over to a vulnerability scanner to do some more research on that. So it becomes hopefully very powerful to understand that all this network data that we can collect through our DDI solution, how that also can be used in the security space. So then a few words then, why should your customer trust a company like Infoblox? Because we're talking about infrastructure. It's the foundational layer of their business. Well, we would like to always call out that we have been in the DDI business for over 20 years, and we have been an absolute leader in this space. We have been innovating in this space. I hope that was also clear in with some of the edge solutions that we now provide, and we'll keep innovating in this space. And also, when we think about the security side of the business, we play on this DNS layer. And with that, we can stop and detect and stop detects early in the chain. So first line of communication, first line of defense. And because we play on the DNS layer, we can also catch those threats, those attacks that happen through the DNS protocol. And because we know DNS so well, we are in the best position to do that. So we catch those threats that the other solutions, security solutions are not able. But we also there to further improve those security strategies by sharing that data with these with the security tools and teams. So we also will keep innovating in bringing more integrations to market, extend the ones that we already have in place. And as a last point on why Infoblox as a partner. So our solutions that we just talked about, these can be deployed how your customer wants it. So they can be deployed partly on-prem, partly in the cloud, fully cloud. There's this hybrid option possible because we also know that your customer is not going to change their infrastructure and say, we're going to turn off our data center today and in a few seconds we are only cloud. So with our hybrid deployment options, your customer can truly move at the speed as they like to. They won't have to follow the speed of the vendor that they are working with. So with that, we would love to work with you together and help you position Infoblox in this with your customers and prospects. Make sure you reach out to your Infoblox general account manager. They're there to help you with the pitches and help you further understand our use cases and where we can bring value. Is your customer already on this cloud first and SASE journey? Let's talk, because we have all these integrations into the best-in-class vendors already available for your customers to use. And if you want more information and on these use cases that we have been covering, you want some training, then also please reach out to us. We're there to help you and looking forward to have a lot of success together. So with that, Peter, are there any questions?
Many thanks to my fellow Dutchie, Danielle. No, I don't see any questions, unfortunately. But yeah, many thanks, Danielle. Some very interesting findings on the Forrester report. So that's always some good takeaways. Then with that, I would like to hand over to Tom from Menlo.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me today. Very excited to start the presentation that we have available today. We're going to be going through how Menlo Security delivers security without compromise using our secure access to the Service Edge platform, but with an isolation core, and how that's a little different from most offerings. So to begin with, we'll just start with saying that our mission has always been SASE. We just didn't know it at the time. So as some of the previous talkers have just mentioned, the SASE term was really coined by Gartner in 2019. But our mission has been of that for much longer than the last 2 years. So we've been enabling the world to connect, communicate, and collaborate securely without compromise from the very beginning. And if we look at the SASE definition, we're not going to read through a bunch of slides together, but you can see the similarities there in terms of providing a comprehensive, secure solution to allow users to connect across all of the applications and resources that they need worldwide. It really does fit with the solution we're operating today, which is a globally distributed service that's providing security, and it's optimized for these enterprise organizations that are obviously trying to connect to many different applications with many different workforces across the world, distributed in different areas, remote workers, people working in offices, etc. So the first word in SASE is secure. So how can we have a secure service edge without actually treating security as a primary objective? That's obviously what Menlo Security does. We've always had security as our primary objective. So let's have a look at some security capabilities available in the Menlo platform today. So as you can see, we're a cloud-based platform that is able to provide security across SaaS applications, but also emails as well, in the form of maybe phishing threats, which could be in the form of malware or ransomware, but also with credential attacking threats as well, which maybe are using more social engineering type techniques. And of course, we need to protect against web threats. The techniques and the sort of the solutions that we have to actually achieve that are shown at the bottom here. So of course, primarily we have our secure web gateway, SWG, ability in the cloud, which is pretty straightforward and is obviously a core part of SASE to provide that safe access to websites. But we also have DLP, data loss protection, which is providing security around the loss of sensitive data in terms of uploads to those websites, including things like Dropbox, but could also mean emails or other techniques or applications that users are integrating with today, making sure that those documents that are being sent out are being inspected and there's no sensitive data there. And a really important one, RBI, or remote browser isolation. This is, of course, if you've seen our previous sessions that we've been running in the last 2 days, you should know very much that isolation is the key differentiator for Menlo Security, and it's really what allows us to provide the primary security that we are actually able to offer in our SASE solution. And we use this isolation technology to, well, basically create a bulletproof shield of an air, well, basically like air gapping the network from the applications available in the cloud. We've removed the ability for executable code to actually operate and execute on a user's device. So we remove the chance of an infection coming from links, webs, applications using the isolation technology. And we believe that isolation really is a core part of the SASE requirement. If you want to have a secure access service edge, if we don't take security as the primary objective, we're not going to be able to actually deliver that. Another really critical component for SASE is elastic scale. And we'll go through micro and macro scaling here. So on the micro side, we look at the user experience. We can see that a elastic and scalable solution is very important for the user. The reason is if we have a varying and inconsistent layout and experience for the user, they will very much notice these differences, and it's going to cause a lot of reduction in productivity and the experience for the users. We can actually achieve this ability through horizontal and vertical scaling. So the Menlo Cloud architecture is based on AWS, Amazon Web Services. This is obviously a cloud-based global platform that is able to achieve a 5.9 in terms of global availability. We actually have, of course, the ability to scale with our platform. One example is the Japan Post, which was a customer that actually onboarded 60,000 users overnight. They actually didn't notify us that this was happening, but the Amazon service platform was actually able to completely scale dynamically with that load, and there was actually no interruption to the user's experience at all, despite the fact that we had 60,000 users onboarded overnight. The platform was able to easily vertically scale and actually manage that load appropriately. Here's a representation of our cloud-based SASE platform across the globe. As mentioned, we are using Amazon Web Services, but we also offer a hybrid deployment as well. So in terms of areas or locations that aren't able to deploy directly to the cloud, we can actually deploy a local VM or appliance there, and then integrate that within the wider global connection as well. So we didn't actually build our cloud platform from taking an appliance and then re-engineering it for the cloud. We've built it all directly from the bottom up. Our solution is built in the cloud for the cloud, and we're leveraging the exact same benefits that draw organizations and users to the cloud in the first place in terms of scalability, availability, and visibility. So some of the direct advantages that that's going to give us are, for example, latency-based proxy routing. So if a user is if a user is in the UK or Europe and they're doing their work and using a SASE platform to connect to the applications and resources and emails that they need, but they then jump on a flight and go over to a business meeting, perhaps in the United States, it's also very important that we achieve a good level of experience for that scenario. If the user moves to a completely different geolocation from a flight, we need to be able to use latency-based routing to connect them to the most local data center to provide the best experience possible. So in that scenario, we would have the user jump off the plane in the United States, and instead of connecting back to the same data center that they were connected to in Europe, they'll be connected to a new one based in America. So it's going to provide the best level of latency and experience, but it's also meaning that we won't need to change the policy. We don't need to have a separate policy for the US or the UK or Europe. It's all going to be based on the same global SASE policy that we're applying in terms of access to certain applications. So having a deployment in the public cloud such as this really allows us to still maintain that user experience, that scalability, and essentially it's aiming to provide that SASE experience that we're all looking and aiming for. We know that the first word of SASE is secure and security, and we believe that SASE without isolation technology isn't going to be secure, and the main reason behind that is around malicious requests being categorized as benign at click time. So about 10 to 15%, as you can see, of malicious requests that users will come across are initially categorized as safe, or perhaps they're categorized as unknown, or they haven't been picked up yet. We can see there's a couple examples there. For example, salesforcelead.com was categorized as computer and internet info. If we're utilizing a typical or legacy proxy, we would apply either a allow or a block policy to the category there. And of course, since it is a safe category, it's quite an important one in terms of, especially within our industry, computer and internet info, we can almost guarantee that an allow policy would have been applied to that website. So if a user clicks on that link, they're immediately going to be allowed to go straight to that website. It's a malware website, so we can pretty much expect that they would be infected. And from there, it's very easy for a breach to actually occur. If we are able to use the remote browser isolation technology that Menlo Security is offering, we're actually able to isolate all web traffic, not just the risky areas. So it would actually protect us against this scenario, since the computer and internet info category would have already been isolated. So even when a user clicks on this link and it's been miscategorized, they're still 100% safe. So protecting the users and providing that SASE capability that is actually secure is very vital to Menlo Security, and we believe we wouldn't be able to do it without our isolation core technology. With SASE and with our isolation platform, we have so much data to choose from and to work with. So at the bottom here, we can see the different levels of visibility that we have within the platform: connection type, HTML, the JavaScript, obviously a very key importance. And all of that visibility is powered by our isolation platform. And this allows us to provide the security that we do around phishing, sandboxing for documents that are downloaded, of course, the browser isolation. And eventually that's going to allow the access, the user experience to be provided. So safe documents, for example, we're only able to provide safe document access to users because of the isolation capability and the visibility that we've gained using that technology. So at the end of the day, the users are experiencing a very easy to use product that's simple and provides them exactly what they need, the access to the applications, the documents, the emails that they require, but it's doing this with 100% security guarantee through isolation as well. We've already had one of our previous speakers speak on the importance of SD-WAN and WAN integration and capability in SASE, and I would, of course, absolutely agree. As you can see, we have a pretty deep integration with VMware's VeloCloud SD-WAN that is available today. That allows us to essentially position the Menlo Cloud Platform as an upstream proxy from an SD-WAN, and they can be forwarded, or the web requests that are required can be forwarded through IPsec. It's a very easy integration. Again, it doesn't require proxy settings, pack files, or agents to be deployed to the user. It's very low touch to those users. They can simply be forwarded directly there. And we have upcoming integrations with other SD-WAN vendors as well, Silver Peak, Versa, etc. And in terms of integrations, it's so important as a SASE vendor to have a wide depth of technology partner ecosystem integrations. As you can see, our main partners, VMware and AWS at the top here. We have so many other technologies that we're working with, a lot of them here presenting today, which is great to see. A key integration that we think develops a lot of value is CDR, or content disarm and reconstruction. That provides an even more security to the document access that users are going to have. We have CASB integration with Microsoft MCAS. You have, of course, any SIM can be used and plugged in to actually provide that alerting from all this additional information that we're collecting, and any type of authentication, IAM provider, Okta, ping, identity, etc., can be used to provide that seamless authentication for the users as well. So I hope today has been very useful for everyone. Hopefully we're still on track to be on time. Hopefully there's maybe a few questions I can answer just at the end of the presentation today.
Many thanks, Tom. No questions at this moment, but just to quickly go back to what you mentioned, I fully agree that you can't do this alone. You need the full ecosystem to be able to provide every customer with their specific needs and wishes. Very good presentation, thank you. And that leaves us to handing over to our last speaker, which is Clive from Symantec.
Hi everyone. Let me just share my presentation. Thank you very much for having me today. Okay, I'd like to talk today about Zero Trust and SASE belonging together. And I know that we've had various content throughout the conference in these areas, and there's a good reason for that, isn't there? It's a huge hot topic, and an area we discussed on the panel earlier on, extremely relevant, that you raised as well, around cloud and around digital transformation. So let me I'll try not to repeat too much on some of the areas. I will skip over maybe some slides where some of the concepts have already been covered, but what I will try and do is show some of the thought process and theories around how Symantec's technology is addressing Zero Trust and SASE, and the value proposition that you can take to your clients and partners. First thing I'd just like to say very, very quickly, it's a big thank you to all of the partners of Symantec. I know as we integrated Broadcom last year, it was a slightly painful integration for many of you as long-standing partners. I'd like to thank you for staying by us, and all I'd like to say there is, although it was a tough first few months, we're well into the Broadcom platform now. Our engineering groups have been working very hard on new innovation and new technology. So I want to talk today about how we're implementing this, how we have been, and what the proposition is for you and your customers. So first thing I'd like to say is, again, frame, as we've heard earlier on, of the challenge organizations have. And if you look at, many of you have been working with our mutual customers for some time, the paradigm is moving network security technology, perimeter technology, out into, of course, the cloud and applications as workloads and data moves. I know the first step, we're moving DNS perimeter into AWS, Azure, or Google. typically, and then the data and applications have been following. Obviously, we talked quite extensively about how the pandemic and COVID-19 has actually accelerated the adoption of cloud technologies in many ways, because when we're working from home, it becomes much easier as well as employees to consume applications and access information from cloud. And you'll see back in May timeframe, 88% of employees were working from home on a regular basis. That was after one of the lockdowns initially occurred. And what has this shown up for organizations? What are the risks and the challenges that we've seen there? Well, some of them are around loss of visibility and control of those remote users, of course, especially if those remote users aren't using their VPN to come in and to backhaul their connectivity. So visibility and control and loss of that has been a huge issue, as I'm sure you recognise, for security professionals. Also, one of the complexities we talked about on a panel earlier on as well, we touched on this, was that there are lots of legacy applications sat in on-prem data centers within companies, and employees need to access those legacy applications from home. In the same way, they need to be working with new collaboration tools, whether it's Office 365 or whether it's file and sync services like Box or CRM systems like Salesforce. The other thing that we've seen is, where organizations are backhauling their traffic by VPN, we've all seen scalability issues of ramping up that VPN technology. And there are extensive number of vulnerabilities in all remote access tools that are really being exposed and exploited by criminal organizations, especially from those that are working from home. Something else I'd say as well is, also, as cloud applications are being adopted more and more and users are going straight to those applications, identity is the last line of defense, and that's been a running topic and theme as well. And that's why various frameworks and architectures have come about, and we talked a lot about this. I'll be very quick on this slide, but zero trust is about never trusting, always verifying that user. And we looked at 868 different breaches that occurred, and 80% of those 868 breaches were down to lost and stolen credentials. So unless you start to step up authentication, apply multi-factor authentication, and all these other techniques in a zero trust framework, you're going to be exposed as an organization. And we see zero trust and SASE holding together as well, and that's been a running theme. We see zero trust because that's a great framework to adopt and not to trust anything, to verify everyone, and to allow least privilege access. And Secure Access Service Edge, the future network security, is a kind of an architecture that you can use to then deploy zero trust. And what's that about? It's about combining comprehensive WAN and security technologies, as we've heard. So again, they really go hand in hand together. If you think about SASE offering security compliance policies, continuous assessment and risk and trust throughout sessions of users connecting to services, zero trust is a de facto security model that can support the implemented and can be implemented by a SASE architecture. So when we look at organizations, we talk about zero trust and SASE, and also when we look at what should the strategy be of a cybersecurity defense company, it should be around deploying SASE architecture in a hybrid world and allowing an organization to start to work through and apply these zero trust policies. So looking at zero trust, it's very important to verify the user, validate the device, and enforce least privileges also when you access that resource. So people are hard to that, and as I mentioned, the identity is a key thing to enforce when you look at zero trust. Devices are just as important, and you can really use devices, can't you? Because depending on whether your device is managed, of course, if you have any endpoint technology as a corporation on a device and it's managed, you can use that to authenticate, to trust that, build trust in that device. But if it's an unknown device or it's a bring your own device, your levels of trust are minimal. Network is a key part, a key thing you can look at as you connect into a cloud resource. Of course, the network might be trusted, not trusted, might be unknown, it might be compromised by some malicious activity. So those are some of the attributes that can help then apply a zero trust policy to our context and control and intelligence as users come in and access that resource. Let's look at the scope you can apply in these attributes. So you can look at whether it's an employee, a partner, and a customer coming into a cloud application. Is it what type of endpoint? Is it a modern tablet or iPhone? Is it a public, private, or managed network? And also, you might use a different technique depending on the type of resource. Whether it's a cloud software as a service application like OneDrive, or whether it's a platform or infrastructure as service, or whether it's an application sat on Amazon or Microsoft Azure or GCP as an example. You may adopt different ways of enforcing a security model there. So how can you verify these things? Of course, if you've got a person coming in and you're looking at their identity, they're authenticating, you can decide based on their role what their tasks they're performing and type of what you do with that policy. As mentioned earlier on, you can look at the type of device, whether it's managed or not, to see if you're going to trust that device coming in, whether it's got an agent on it. Depending on the operating system, the version that's the browser that's being used, can also determine some context around the risk of a user coming into a resource. And of course, the network, if you've got good threat intelligence coming in, you've got some visibility over whether that might be compromised by a botnet, whether it's an anonymized network or whether it's very familiar and it's actually a corporate network that user's coming in from. Finally, having given access to cloud resources, you should also be considering giving least access privileges. So if a user is, for example, using a box file and sync service, and they're on a personal device, it gives you the opportunity there, just to allow them to view sensitive documents in that service and not to download that content onto device if it's not required for that user to do their job. So all of these things, the context of risk, the threat intel, any anomalies you see in users, perhaps they're popping up very quickly in different countries and different geolocations, which would look strange, or they're working from home normally, and then suddenly you see them working from another location. You may change the policy model there. And there are very actionable controls that you can apply, of course, whether it's applying strong authentication, whether it's encrypting items and documents, accepting just terms and conditions to secure the risk, or whether it's auditing. There's all these controls you can put into place. Let's just give a very simple example. You might have a full-time employee who's part of your domain, off the corporate network, accessing an HR application, and your decision may be there's no anomalies there, they're coming in, but we do need to step up multi-factor authentication, being the fact that it's an HR application that they're accessing remotely. Okay. So yourselves as partners working with all those different organizations, when you look at zero trust and you look at the opportunity there, it really is about helping an organization to apply this framework, to understand what the policy looks like. And once you understand that, you can decide on what product capabilities need to be deployed to fulfill those security concerns. And of course, that's something you've been doing as a partner ecosystem for many years and can come into your own here with advising around zero trust. And we often see, two main paths of starting with a zero trust policy. Some organizations start with the data. And, if you look at Forrester, who initially came up with this framework many years ago now, data is at the heart of their model there and how you look at this. And if you start with the data, you need to define first, discover where that data is. put some inline traffic inspection to understand how the data is being used. And then when you start to look with an organization where their data is and the flows of that data, then you can start to look at that pivotal technology that can support zero trust. And there's some examples on this slide. You know, content-aware data loss prevention on all those different control points can then understand the flows of data. CASB technology is very good at integrating with sanctioned cloud applications and through the APIs to govern how data and how users are working with data when they're at home. And a web security service or cloud proxy enables that inline data control wherever the user resides, wherever they're coming in from as well. So there's just some sample technologies that can then support the zero trust strategy of that organization. Some of the things to really consider here as well is how can you deploy that security model in a hybrid cloud architecture? Because it's very unusual for a company just to move everything to cloud. Most organizations are hybrid and need to be able to control data as it moves from on-prem repositories into different types of cloud applications. So that's also a key consideration. Another way some organizations look is to begin with access. You know, let's look at the levels of access with this data. And you know, how do you prioritize the capabilities there? Well, you can start to look at segmenting applications that your users are going to, applying least privileged access rights, and understand what that policy model looks like. And then, you know, when you start to identify the technologies that support that, there's a whole market around software-defined perimeter, or another name for that, a newer name for some of the technologies that supports that is zero trust network access technology. And also multi-factor authentication alongside that supports this secure enablement of users to access internal applications. And this technology here is very, very useful to kill that VPN, to avoid having to use a VPN for somebody sat at home who needs to access an internal application, maybe a legacy application in a data center, or a development application on an IaaS platform such as Azure or AWS or GCP. So, you know, that's a couple of examples around helping an organization define that zero trust policy model and which technologies to look at to support that. When you look at Symantec's approach here, you know, if I was to show one slide around, you know, a blueprint of how we look at zero trust, you'll see here the heart of zero trust is that policy model we talked about. Now, you know, what's the unique proposition for working with Symantec, the Symantec technology at Broadcom with your customers? It is around heritage and market leadership of some of this tech. You'll see here what we're doing. We're building our zero trust policy model on our market leading data loss prevention policy model. So we're using what we have, we're developing it, and the next generation is moving it to a zero trust model that can be applied to all these different scenarios on the right hand side of the screen here. And then depending on the cloud resource you need to apply that policies to, you're going to select things like a secure web gateway, CASB, software defined perimeter technology, Symantec calls secure access cloud, or a secure email gateway to layer on and to support that zero trust policy for all the different use cases on the left here as well, where you've got users coming in from managed or unmanaged devices. So we're building this policy model of our market leadership in endpoint security on endpoint product, in our CASB cloud solution, our secure web gateway products portfolio, and our data loss prevention portfolio, key areas there. With some innovative new technology and acquisitions that support our software-defined perimeter technology too. So look, that's the way we're thinking about it, and that's the way, you know, you can use the approach prior to that to then start to select some of these technologies that can support that zero trust model. Some of the benefits here of looking at a company like Symantec and the technology we have at Broadcom around these different areas are, if you start to integrate technology like we have, you can deliver improved security outcomes. You can roll off some operational efficiencies to your customers. And that reduces operational complexity as well. And of course, visibility and audit and compliance is a key one. I mean, visibility from a threat protection perspective, and you've only got to look at something like the Sunburst solar winds vulnerability to say that, look, unless you're an organization that was looking at all these different control points and getting visibility of what was going on, it would have been very, very easy to miss that Sunburst attack in your organization because it was extremely sophisticated. Also, from a compliance perspective, getting visibility across all those different cloud connection points as well as on-premise. Also, from a data perspective, a GDPR perspective, let's say, as an example, gives you better visibility of where your sensitive data is going, how it's being used in cloud applications, and where it's come from on-premise as well. Okay, I just want to spend now a few moments moving on to SASE. As I mentioned earlier on, we see Zero Trust as being that framework, that policy model. And SASE is the architecture behind that to help to deploy some of these technologies cohesively. So again, we look at those both together, and that's the way we're developing our roadmap and strategy to underpin Zero Trust delivered via a SASE architecture. This slide gives you a view of some of the top SASE components according to Gartner, top 10 SASE components. Of course, there are many, but these have been highlighted. Symantec's in a really strong position here with the technology that you would know, because we have 9 out of those top 10 capabilities. The one area we don't have technology in is that SD-WAN. We've had some great presentations on SD-WAN, and we have technology integration and partnership with most SD-WAN vendors in that space. When you look at those other areas there, we have secure web gateway technology, Zero Trust network access, DLP, and all those other pieces and components. And we've been in the industry in those areas for many, many years. So what we've been focusing on in the last year or so is bringing them and integrating together to then deliver on a SASE platform. And this is how we're looking at it. Again, think of this is a different lens to look at this problem than the Zero Trust lens I sort of focused on this area a few slides away. So look at it from an architectural perspective. You need to be able to cater for the scenarios on the left of employees coming in from an office, regional offices, and roaming users working from home or coming in from all sorts of different locations. And on the right, you've got different types of SaaS, IaaS, private applications, or internet web browsing to cater for. So, on-prem technology has a role here, and you'll see on the left in those red circles, you'd be talking, and you will have many Blue Coat or Proxy SG web gateway customers out there with on-prem hardware or software. You've got many endpoint protection SEP anti-malware customers out there with an agent. These technologies, if you're talking to have a customer in those areas, they can use those technologies to route traffic into our SASE cloud, whether it's an on-prem proxy or whether it's a SEP agent protecting all their endpoints. These can now route traffic into Secure Access Cloud so that you can start to apply all of the other controls on the right here that you'd expect to need from a SASE role applying Zero Trust policies. Things like web isolation, you heard some on that topic from the Menlo team earlier on. We have some web isolation technology there as well. DLP, Cloud Access Security Broker. Of course, you'd expect advanced malware analysis, sandboxing, cloud firewall services. And for accessing private applications without a VPN, right at the bottom there, Secure Access Cloud service offers that as well. So, as mentioned before, we have all this technology. We already have DLP in the cloud. We already have SEP routing traffic into cloud. We have all that technology, and most of it is pretty well integrated today. But the focus is to continue from a commercial perspective as well as from an integration perspective to make it very easy for you as a partner to draw down on SASE bundle licensing and a flexible model for your customers to move from on-prem software, perhaps for a legacy proxy, into a dynamic cloud delivered application if they choose to move as they move their data into these services. One really important thing about SASE, and it was touched on some of the other presentations, but I want to spend a little bit of time on this, is around the user experience of SASE and how important it is, as we all know, to maintain a good user experience. If an employee is sat from home, working from home, and as a result of adding extra security technology, their experience gets worse and the latency gets worse, then of course that's a no-win for everybody. One of the things we've done in Symantec as we've come into Broadcom, as many of you may already know, is that we've moved to a strategic partner with GCP as our platform for SASE and our platform for cloud. And there are really some really good reasons for that I want to spend a bit of time from. And I think on one of the last presentations, the point was really well made, that you really, as a SASE vendor, you need to be on a public IS backbone. It's critical, because if you're using on-prem data centers, you can't scale. You know, you can't be responsible for we're security vendors. We shouldn't be responsible for rolling out these huge data centers across the globe. The public IaaS vendors, they do that, whether it's AWS, whether it's Microsoft Azure or GCP. We selected GCP for a couple of reasons as this SASE plane. And you know, IS is critical to get those points of presence really, really close to the user. And all of the IS vendors have an incredible point of presence across the globe, fairly like for like in terms of their presence. But one of the things I like to say about GCP is that we've moved our cloud proxy service was the first technology to move there. We moved it from a legacy platform into GCP in about 6 months. And as a result of that, some things we found have been a great benefit. On the right-hand side, you see for the corporate world, there's many improved suite of infrastructure certifications. Been very impressed with those that are available with GCP. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this other scenario about user experience. Now, imagine a scenario there where an employee sat in North America and they're accessing an application, a cloud application in Europe. So, of course, with any IaaS service, it will pick the closest point of presence in North America. It will route the traffic through. And if it can, you're going to then apply the security technology in your SASE stack and then access the resource in Europe. What we found is GCP has the largest private backbone of all the IS providers. It's over 3 times the size of Amazon. It's over 10 times the size of Microsoft. Google spends $17 billion last year on hardware and submarine cable within their network. And we think that's a massive USP, because look at what we've seen from the user experience is that Google has a very good peering relationship with local ISPs. And many of that comes from their consumer services like YouTube, as well as the search engine to get very close to the user. So what you'll find is the points of presence are closer and the peering is more extensive than Microsoft and Amazon. And their backbone is as well. So you can take that traffic off the public network, apply the security controls that we have, and then get to the resource really quickly. And in that way, you can push the service edge really, really close to the end user. What this has resulted in is actually, in especially remote locations like India or some places in Africa, we find the user experience gets better for a user, because although we're applying the Symantec security controls, they get off the public network into Google's private backbone from India to Europe, let's say, and they actually get a faster experience. So whilst all the IS providers have fantastic application controls, and arguably Amazon and Microsoft are further ahead on some application controls, for a network-based security solution, Google seems to offer by far the most fastest experience. So that's something that we started talking an awful lot about in the way we're delivering our technology. I know I've only got about a minute, so let me just wrap up on this slide quickly. One thing I'd say is we're sort of finding that when SASE comes into play, different groups within companies are approaching it in a different way. we're finding network and endpoint teams are coming at it from a network and endpoints perspective. And the thought process isn't as mature as when you move to other organizations that already have CISOs and governance, risk, compliance, and legal looking at the policies here. We're finding the most mature thinking organizations, as you would recognize, we have a huge Symantec data loss prevention install base and very mature programs out there. We're finding customers that have a DLP program, it might not be Symantec, it might be other technology, actually are looking at SASE and Zero Trust in a much more mature way and looking at it cohesively across all of these control points. So just a point to note for you as a partner ecosystem, you might already be seeing this, but certainly looking at those that have a mature DLP program is a great place to start. So just to wrap up my presentation, I hope you found that useful. Just confirm that we see Zero Trust as the what, the framework, and SASE is the how you deliver it, and many use cases there. And as I say, we are everything we do at Symantec and Broadcom is focusing on those efforts, obviously in this new work from home use cases we're seeing and cloud application adoption. Thank you, everyone. I'll stop there to see if there's any questions.
Many thanks, Clive. No questions, but a good intel again. And I personally didn't know that 80% of all data breaches were due to compromised passwords. So some very interesting info to take away. Yeah, I want to thank all of our presenters from our highly valued vendors. I want to invite everybody to move back to the auditorium where we will proceed with our reseller awards. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions, please go into our virtual booths or contact us, Westcon, or the vendor, of course, directly after these sessions. So many thanks, everybody, and we will see you in the auditorium.